If an asteroid was heading towards Earth, what would you do? Would you do anything necessary to stop it, no matter how bad that thing you do is? Today, we hear from an atheist who states this very clearly, and it's an important lesson for us to hear because this is what many on the left and some on the right think is actually morality. I'm Matt Odegaard, and welcome to Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. My name is Matt Odegaard. I'm your host today. We look at current events from a Christian perspective, and today we're looking at an atheist who talks about, morality in a certain sense, that the ends justify the means. We're going to talk a lot about that. But before we get to that, if you are listening on audio, I love you and thank you. If you want to like, subscribe, share, give a 5-star review. I love all of that. If you want to see the video, you can go to YouTube if I'm still up there, which sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, depending on how they're feeling. Or you can go to churchpublic.com, and one way or another, I'll get the video there. You can go to churchpublic.com/podcasts for that. All right, back to this story. So we're talking about an atheist today, and we're talking about an atheist who has said that if there were an asteroid headed towards Earth, wouldn't you do anything you can to avoid that? And that seems like a rather extreme example, but that's his example, not mine. So we're talking about Sam Harris today, and Sam Harris is talking about this idea about elections, about what you're supposed to do in elections. And before we get to that, let's just back up and talk just in general terms, because I think it's important to understand what we're talking about. This atheist that we'll hear from today, and many secular liberals, right, people who don't believe in God per se or a specific God, and they're liberal because they just want to progress in some way or another. Some faster than others. There are liberals on the left that want to progress really, really fast and get to this paradise on earth. And there are liberals on the right who want to progress, but not as fast. And we've looked at a bunch of that. We've looked at that from the perspective of, what do you believe about certain words and definitions? What do you believe about marriage? What do you believe about women? What do you believe about men? Are men and women the same thing? Or are they different things, like definitionally in biology and spiritually and biblical terms they actually are? Those are the questions that we have to figure out as we go through this. Do words have any meaning at all? So this atheist today, and many secular liberals on the left and even the right, say something like, the ends justify the means. The ends justify the means. And you've probably heard this. You may have even said this. You may live like this. But this is the topic that we're talking about today. In other words, the ends justify the means is saying, do whatever you have to do in order to get your preferred outcome. And a lot of times, this is said in the context of eliminating something that's really bad from your life, from the world, from politics, whatever. You have to do whatever you need to do to get to that preferred outcome. And it's especially true in moral terms. If you feel something is a right, this is the quote unquote right that we've been talking about and hearing about and dealing with, you will likely do anything you can to make sure that right is protected. Take abortion, for example. The proponents of abortion believe abortion to be a moral good, to allow women to abort their unborn children. They really think it's a moral good. It's a right. Therefore, there can be nothing immoral about pursuing that goal. Like, for instance, what we've seen and talked about and heard, the vandalism and firebombings we've seen of churches and pro-life pregnancy centers. I have said it's a terrible thing and it's immoral, sure. But many on the left, many celebrities, many politicians have said, well, it's not that great, but it's not that bad because women obviously need the right of abortion. And you've had people like Senator Warren who said we have to get rid of all these pregnancy centers because they're the bad. They're terrorizing, those were her words, terrorizing women. These pro-life pregnancy centers where they save women and babies. Terrorizing women. You see how this works in terms of the ends justify the means. If the end is good, that they say, and the end is abortion for women on demand up until the moment of birth or maybe beyond, and that's the goal that they have, any means necessary to get to that end is itself a moral good. You have to get yourself into this mindset. This is the mindset. And for instance, another example, take the guy who wanted to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. The majority of the media and the politicians on the left said, sure, this isn't great, But Kavanaugh should have done the right, quote unquote, right thing in the right place, aka vote for abortion, not against it. And this goes in all directions on all issues. Children should be given the right to choose their gender. And if you stand in the way of them hearing about the 65 genders from their teacher, you, the parent, are considered and labeled by the Department of Justice a domestic terrorist because you're getting in the way of the goal that they see as a moral good. So you are now immoral, not moral. But on the other side of things, a raid on the former president's personal residence, well, that's fine. That's not bad because he is bad and he must be eliminated. He must be punished. So again, the end justifies the means. This is also the basis for critical race theory, gender theory, social justice, and on and on. This is the issue and this is the battle that we face as Christians because, hear this, the ends justify the means is the actual opposite of the morality of Christ. I'm just going to say that again so that we're all on the same page. If you believe that the ends justify the means, you are going the opposite direction of Christ. This is not Christian. It's not biblical. It's really not even moral when you think about it, and we'll look at that in a second. But we have to understand that Christian morality is to do what is right no matter the outcome. I'm going to say that again too. Christian morality is to do what is right no matter the outcome. And this is where we get in trouble because we think, but you have to do the right, you have to get to the right thing. You have to get to the goal. You set a goal, you got to get to the goal. Everybody needs to get to the goal. Like the goal is the right thing. So you have to do whatever you can to get to the goal, right? Isn't that the right way to do it? According to Christ, no, that's not the right way to do it. And he even talks very specifically about things like this. Things when he talks about murder, he says, if you have been angry and had anger in your heart for somebody, you have committed something to the effect of murder towards them. It's about who you are, what you think about, and what you do, not the end goal, because our goal is so much higher than these worldly goals are. From Abraham to Moses, to Daniel, to many of the prophets, you see this throughout all of the Old and New Testament. And of course, then we get to Jesus and the disciples and Paul. All of these guys show us do what is right no matter the outcome. We could take any one of those as an example. Daniel as an example. He was told to go along with the culture, and if you don't, we're going to feed you to the lions. And he said, I'm going to do what's right, even if I don't live. And on and on and on. We could go through all of these different examples. Jesus is obviously a fantastic example of this premise that he could have just said, just kidding about all this God stuff. Can you just let me live? And yet he didn't because you have to do what is right, no matter the outcome. And for many of these guys, for many of the disciples, for many of the followers of Jesus, since Christ came to this earth, the outcome was death or worse. But this is the definition of integrity. This is what's important. Doing what is right, even when no one is looking. I'm going to say that again too. Integrity. Doing what is right, even when, or maybe especially when, no one is looking. And this is the opposite of our cultural reality right now. Our current cultural reality, our current cultural morality says you only need to apologize if you get caught, and maybe not even then. And this is the problem. Instead, Christ says, you need to do the right thing even if no one sees you. It is, again, the exact opposite of what this culture is telling you. And to be fair, just to get theological for a second, we can't even do the right thing on our own. That was the Pharisees' problem. They thought they were all well and good because they did all the right things, but they didn't actually do all the right things because their heart was still full of stone instead of a heart of God and a heart of spirit and a heart of righteousness. But I'm not going to get too far into the theology of that right now. I just need you to know that we can only follow Jesus by faith. And we're only saved by his grace that we can't earn and we can't do enough of. But we also read in James that faith without works is dead. James 2. So here's the quick run through. When you decide by faith to follow after Jesus, and he gives you the grace and gives you the righteousness, then what comes out of you will be works, because if you're not doing works out of the redemption that God gives you, I question, are you actually redeemed? Are you actually following after Jesus? Because you cannot be the same. You just cannot be the same if you're following after God. That's just the reality of it. That may be a self-check for you as well. But let's get back to this issue at hand. What you do and why you do it is of the most importance. Not the ends justify the means. So that was a long way around, but we have to understand this because we have to understand what the ends justify the means really is. And it is not Christianity. It's not morality. It's not even democracy. To say the ends justify the means is to actually go around this idea of the rule of law that we've talked so much about. Because the rule of law is whatever you do, you will be punished for justly, regardless of who you are or how powerful you are, how rich you are, all of those things, right? But the ends justify the means is what we see when, if you're a certain class of person, if you're a certain race of person, if you're a certain power level of person, or if you have a certain wealth, then you can do what you want to do because, well, what you were doing was okay, and we don't have to follow the rule of law. That's the opposite of the rule of law. It's the opposite of Christianity. The ends justify the means does not work, and it only leads to more tyranny and more slavery. It's really bad for society, and it's bad for your soul as well. So, the ends justify the means is not something that we should pursue, and we need to understand that if we are following Christ. If you just want to go your own way and live in a Machiavellian way where you just do what's best for you and basically burn everybody else to the ground in kind of a Darwin survival of the fittest kind of thing, I mean, you can do that. That's just not Christian. It's not following after Christ. So that's where we have to understand the terms and understand what we're talking about. So, all of that as an intro to hear from this atheist who just went viral for saying out loud what many on the left and some on the right have been thinking and actually doing. So in this clip, what we're about to see is an atheist talking about how if someone does a bad thing or is a bad person, it doesn't matter what bad thing you do, you have to keep that bad person away from the bad position, aka president. So we're going to hear Sam Harris talk about how you have to use a moral valuation on one person, but don't use that moral valuation on another person, like the other candidate for president, then I'm getting lost in myself. Like it doesn't make sense, but we're talking about the election. We're talking about whether or not you can investigate a person to see if they're immoral, or you just know that they are immoral. Those are the two hands. I think it will help to watch this clip, and then let's talk about it afterwards.
I mean, Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared, right? It's like, there's nothing. First of all, it's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden. But even if whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right? Or China. It is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in. It's like a firefly to the sun, right? I mean, like there's just it doesn't even stack up against Trump University, right? Trump University as a story is worse than anything that could be in Hunter Biden's laptop, in my view, right? Now, that doesn't answer the people who say it's still completely unfair to not have looked at the laptop in a timely way and to have shut down the New York Post's Twitter account. Like that's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump.
Yeah, so this is where we get into just some weird moral territory. First of all, we talk about atheism. Like, can you have moral judgments on atheism? I don't know. I mean, it seems weird to me because I don't understand how you can judge anything if there is no judge of things, right? God is the judge of all things so that we know what is right and what is wrong. If you don't believe in God, then what is your judge of things? I mean, you can say be kind, but why? Why would you be kind? After all, doesn't Darwin say it's survival of the fittest? The one that does the best wins. The ones with the most toys wins. The ones with the most everything wins. The strongest survive, right? Isn't that the Darwinian way? And I don't understand how, without a morality based on a foundation of God, I don't know where you get your morality. Now, that's only half true because I know I can pick up Romans and it says at the very beginning that everyone knows some form of morality. So I think God has written morality onto your heart. And I think God placed that in you, in me, in everyone, because that's who we are as children of God. We know that there's a right. We know that there's a wrong. And then what we have to do is just realize we are talking about a moral world and we are talking about a moral reality, and we just have to get on the same page as to, well, what morality is that? And that's where we have to figure all of this out. And we have to figure out, well, okay, and who is right and who is wrong. And by the way, they're like corpses of children. That's, oh yeah. So what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing this right, and you can go back and rewind it and make sure I'm checking my notes here. What I'm hearing here is, if we know, according to Sam Harris, that Trump was super corrupt, he has to be stopped. So the ends justify the means. That's what we've been talking about. So it doesn't matter if Hunter Biden has corpses in the basement. It doesn't matter if Hunter Biden colluded with people and sold out America. It doesn't matter if Joe Biden himself was involved in some of that. This is according to Sam Harris, because Trump is so corrupt. What did he say? It's like a firefly next to the sun. So Trump is the sun of corruption, and something like having corpses in your basement is a firefly. This is his analogy, right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense, and it doesn't hold up, obviously. But this is where we get to this idea of logic is just not making sense in this. So there's one more clip from Sam Harris that we have to listen to, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this idea of pursue the ends regardless of the means. Do whatever you want to get to the end, because if the end is right, it doesn't matter if you do wrong to get to right. This is like 2 wrongs do make a right, or 7 wrongs make a right. I guess. I'm trying to understand this as much as you are, because it doesn't make sense to me morally. But this is not, and here's the reason we're talking about this. This is a very popular thinker in America, and a lot of people not only follow this particular thinker, Sam Harris, but a lot of people think like this. And we've seen this in all of the different areas. I mentioned some of them earlier. But we see this, and we have to understand this is how a lot of people think. You may even think this way. You may even think, well, this person is wrong, so we have to get rid of them, even if we do wrong things to get rid of them. Literally, 2 wrongs do equal a right in this sense. But let's listen to the second clip, and then we'll talk more about it.
Trump. Absolutely it was. Absolutely. Right. But I think it was warranted. Right. And again, it's a coin toss as to whether or not
Sam, I'm sorry.
That particular piece.
I'm really sorry. I was the one that said we should move on, but you've just said something I really struggle with there, which is
the kids in the basement?
No. The kids in the basement. I'm interested in democracy. You're saying you are content with a left-wing conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically re-elected as president.
Well, no, I'm content. Well, but the thing is, it's just not left-wing, right? So Liz Cheney is not left-wing, right? Liz Cheney is doing everything in her power.
You're content with a conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically elected.
But there's nothing, conspiracy, it's not, it was a conspiracy out in the open. But it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter what part's conspiracy, what part's out in the open. I mean, I think it's like, if people get together and talk about what should we do about this phenomenon, if it's like, if there was an asteroid hurtling toward Earth, and we got in a room together with all of our friends and had a conversation about what we could do to deflect its course, right?
So that's it. That's where I started with the asteroid, and that's where Sam Harris ends in this clip. And it's a long thing. You can go watch the whole thing if you want to. It's probably on the YouTubes or wherever you get videos these days. But hear that. If Trump, apparently, is an asteroid coming towards the Earth, wouldn't you do anything possible to stop it? Wouldn't you get in a room with super smart people and choose to do whatever it takes to stop this person, this asteroid, from hitting the Earth, hitting America, destroying quote-unquote democracy? But note, this interviewer for Sam Harris even stops him and says, hey, wait a minute. I like democracy. It sounds to me like you are saying you need to stop using the democratic process, aka voting and choosing the right candidate, so that you can save the democratic process. Like, that might sound crazy, but that's what the interviewer caught, and that's what I heard. Sam Harris is saying Trump is so bad that we have to do whatever it takes, and that is, again, like right before the 2020 election, this Hunter Biden laptop came out, but even the New York Post got kicked off of social media for mentioning that this laptop existed, which it has, and has been confirmed and corroborated by the federal government itself, right? So it's a real thing. It's really there. There's terrible things on it. I'm not going to play you any of those things. I wouldn't even suggest going to look at any of those things. Really, don't. But it's real. It existed. The government colluded with the tech companies to not let it happen. Sam Harris is saying that's a good. It's a moral good, because the other point would have been Trump being elected, and that's a moral bad, right? So see how this works? So Trump is an asteroid, and he's a moral bad. So Biden, who's a moral good, has to get elected no matter what. And we go back to the atheism thing there. Well, then how do you know what a moral good is? I mean, that's the question, right? Is a moral good doing the right thing, or is it doing whatever you want to do to get to the end that you want? I mean, who's judging? And if you can't even investigate this laptop, which may have collusion in it, we don't know. If you can't even investigate it, how do you know if that's not a moral bad or a moral worse, right? How do you know? Because you're not even allowed to investigate it. So this interviewer, rightly so, says, hey, wait, you're saying we should stop using democracy in order to preserve democracy, which is a really bad precedent, because once you start down that path, then what's the limit? And that's the thing that people have been questioning and been unable to question, because again, you get kicked off of places for talking about this. And as I mentioned, you may find this on YouTube, you may find it on the social media sites, you may not, I don't know. But so are you allowed to ask these questions, or are you not allowed to ask these questions? Can you ask, like, what is free and fair? What is democracy? Or democracy is the outcome that you want it to be, which, by the way, definitionally is not democracy. And that gets back to the meaning of words, which we keep talking about and keep coming back to, because if they can redefine words to whatever they want them to be, then their reality matches whatever they want it to be, not actual reality. And that's really a problem. It's a problem if your reality is whatever you want it to be, rather than actually the true things. And that's what we need to get to. And we're going to get to that from a Christian perspective in a moment, because that really is what we do here on Church Public, current events from a Christian perspective. So, is democracy really the thing where you pursue the means to an end, and you pursue the means based on the rule of law, based on process that everybody gets the same process for? Or is democracy, as the left, Sam Harris, and other people would have you believe, democracy is the end result that they want to be, and however you get there is the right way? If you need to suppress information that would indict people, if you need to kick people off the bus, kick people off social media because you don't want to hear their voices, so that you can get to this preferred quote-unquote democracy that you want, is that really democracy? And if bells are going off in your head going, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like democracy. That doesn't sound like something we voted for. That sounds like you're telling me what to do and saying, if you don't agree with what I'm telling you to do, you're not democratic. Right. That's the point. And that's really where we are. And that's why this clip is really important, because this is one of the mainline thinkers of this left party. And this left party does this kind of thing all the time. They redefine words: woman, man, male, female, marriage, babies. Like, what is a baby? All of these things. And now democracy. Democracy is whatever they want it to be and whatever outcome they want it to be, not the actual process of voting people in and going through the process established by the Declaration and the Constitution and the amendments, etc., etc. No. Free and fair elections and democracy and actually voting for somebody, and whoever wins, with all of the information that you can have, like where information is not suppressed by big tech or the tech conglomerate or whoever. This is the problem that we're moving into. So this is the crazy logic that apparently we're living in. And now I want to make a turn into Christianity, because we have to end there. We have to find ourselves where truth really is. Because living like Christ is the exact opposite of pursuing the means, pursuing the ends, whatever the means is, right? The ends justify the means. So the culture says, you know a goal, get there however you want. If you need to cheat, lie, steal, murder, I don't know, whatever you need to do, get to that end. That's the goal. Christ says, no, your goal is to live rightly, or as we say in Christianity, many points throughout the Bible, live righteously, right? Live in a righteous way in all of your decisions, and in fact in all of your thoughts. But that's getting even deeper in this that we won't get into much at this point. You need to do the right actions, and you need to do the right actions because they're the right actions, even if no one is looking. And that is the difference in Christianity. And you may succeed according to the culture. You may fail according to the culture. You may get fired. You may lose your scholarship. You may get kicked out of school. You may get kicked out of your family for doing the right thing and going against culture. Jesus has warned us all of these things are possibilities. Or worse, because the culture really, really doesn't like truth. It didn't like him to the point where they killed him. But Jesus says in Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these other things will be added to you. And that's really the bottom line here. That's what we have to understand, that the ends do not justify the means. We are not allowed by conscience, by character, by integrity, by Christ himself, we're not allowed to do whatever we want to do to get to a goal. If you have to lie, cheat, steal, murder to get to your goal, you're doing it wrong. That's not Christianity. And we need to understand that, and we need to follow after that. Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God. In other words, follow after Jesus and his righteousness, right? Do the right things, and everything else will get taken care of. That's Matthew 6:33. And here's a great word from Paul. This is Paul when he talks about, to the Philippians. He says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellent thing, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. In other words, put your mind on the good things. Don't do or think about the bad things. And it doesn't stop there. This gets to James, so we talked about it a moment ago, and we'll talk about it again in a second. Paul says, what you have learned and what you have received and what you have heard and what you have seen, here it is, practice these things. So think about the true, the honorable, the just, the pure, the lovely, the commendable, the excellent, the praiseworthy things. Think about all of those things and then do them. This is how you know you're following Christ. This is how, and then there is a promise in this verse too. The God of peace will be with you, because this world says peace, have peace, be peace, blah, 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 whatever. You're not going to find it in this world. You're not going to find it in this culture because it doesn't exist in that place. The only place where you can actually find peace is through Jesus Christ and the Spirit that lives within you when you follow after him. So concentrate on the true things, the honorable things, the just things, pure, lovely, commendable, excellent, and praiseworthy. Think about those things, put your mind on those things, and then do them. Do those things. Don't do the other things, because the end does not justify the means, no matter what this culture will tell you. And as James says, faith without works is dead. You need to have this faith, and the works will be a fruit out of that. They will come out of that, because you cannot live in line with Jesus and stay the same. That is the good news of the day. And I hope that finds good news in your heart as it does in mine. I hope that God blesses you and keeps you, that you keep your eyes, your heart, your mind, your soul focused on him. Seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness. Everything else will be added to you. God bless, and keep the faith.